welcome back to the channel. So this is a bit of a different video on a number of points. First off, I haven't finished this model. I don't probably intend to for certainly the short term. The main issue being I put a lot into this build, as you'll see, and right towards the end, as I was putting the tracks together, I realised there wasn't enough tracks in this kit, and it's Dragon's fault. I did reach out to them. They didn't care. I haven't heard from them, so that was disappointing. I had since got another Sherman, a Firefly, which had enough. The problem that you might have just seen there, it said Z126. That's meant to be 150, so you haven't got enough to do one side, and it's just ridiculous, really. I mean, I don't even know what I can say about it. You know, the company should know how many tracks they need to put in. Regardless of that, still got the model. It is actually painted, and I may come back to it at a later date, but I felt like it was worth sharing with you the build, at least, because I've got that completed, and we do super detail this, and we go into quite a lot of interesting corrections. So first off, these are the British Shermans. It's the Sherman Mark II. It is the first M4A1 that was sent over, and it was actually the British that fielded it at El Alamein in 1942. You just saw me cutting off rivets. That boils down to picking which scheme you're going to go with. So you've got a number of schemes in this kit, and it really all boils down to them being built in two different factories. So one is the Pressed Steel Car Company, and the other is Lima Locomotive. The one I'm doing, I tracked down with historical photos and people who've already done builds online that this was a Lima one. Therefore, the holes, the lower hull wasn't riveted. It also had a curved rear plate as well. A few other little identifying features that would go on to, which is what I then, when I realised what they were, I was able to look at the photos and see them. The Lima ones have quite unusual rear taillight guards and a few other noticeable things. And when you find the odd picture, I was looking on IWM, I think I finally found it. There's a load of Shermans flying off into the distance. You can see the back, and you can see exactly where everything's meant to be, and you can see which light guards they've got. It should have this rear plate that's angled at the bottom where my thumb is. That technically should be curved. That's not 100%. It's one of those things that, 95% of Lima Shermans would have been curved. However, there are examples where they're angled. So I've done a bit of both. I just sand it around to make it look like it's curved, but you can get a resin section that goes in there if you want to convert it. So one of the first details is what I'm doing here. So you've just seen that I've got the Sherman air cleaner. So these were improved. The plastic card circles that I'm touching there is covering over the old pepper pot style air cleaners, and these were put on the Shermans that ended up in British service. And you can see I've sanded around a little bit there as well on the bottom plate. So that was the first thing. A lot of this you don't need to do. It goes without saying. There's a lot of cast marks as well that show up, and some are in the kit, some are not, depends which part. It's typical Dragon where they throw in parts from kits from like 2005 all the way up until kind of 2015, so you get some really highly detailed bits and then some more sort of basic looking bits, but it's all in here. It's a very good kit. If it wasn't for the tracks, it's a very good kit. The light guards, you get photo-etch ones. I didn't want to mess about with them, so I used my 3D printed ones by MJR, I believe. You'll see them later on. There's a box of clamps. It's that company. They're known for making miniatures. This is the interesting light guard at the rear tail light, which I scratch built out of bits of photo etch, and that's kind of unique to this Lima one. They were done like that in the factory. The other tail light guards are rather similar to the ones on the left here, just where my finger is just placed. It's kind of like a curve with a line at the back. Just showing you how to deal with a bit of 3D resin there. You just want to clip it off nice and flush with some good cutters. These are the Display ones. Are they good? I think they could be better. They're sold as good anyway, but they're good enough for this. That's not for now. And then when you got it cut off, I actually glued these on with plastic glue. Tamiya Extra Thin. Not that it does anything to the resin that these are made out of, but it melts the plastic enough for the resin to sink into, and that melting bond holds it and stops any super glue bits. Because if you use super glue, you get little ridges, and then you can see the sort of shininess of the plastic around it. I've gone in and stippled it with the glue to give a bit of cast texture. So this is me now scratch building one of those tail lights. Very fiddly work. Apologies, it goes out of focus. But you can see the process here. It's simple stuff. On the focus front, if you've been watching my videos and think, oh, stuff does go out of focus. Yes. Well, after whatever it is, 5 years of making videos, this weekend I finally worked out how to change the aperture on videos. So they shouldn't go out of focus so much from now on. There's another few more videos to deal with before we reap the benefits of that, but I know how to film stuff now. So you can see a nice twist off of camera and a little bit more out of focus, and that gives us the right twist. That initial twist I showed you didn't give what it looks like in the photo, and there's some fantastic reference for this. It's free and it's on the internet, and I'll link it below. It's called Shadok.free. So it's the Shadok, it's the Sherman website basically, and they've got a lovely page of showing you the differences for Lima vehicles and pressed car steel works. Sherman's. I've put a little bit of stretch sprue underneath these joints here as well, just pushing it in with the Tamiya Extra Thin, just to give a kind of weld bead. And as that is wet with Tamiya glue, you can then just catch it with the tip of a knife blade, and that will give you some sort of weld marks. And that's plenty good enough on this scale anyway. I mean, it's tough for anyone to see, really. No, don't do it, because I would get in a right mess doing this on camera, but I'm just showing you. You just go in with the tip of the blade and do it then. And that gives you the light card. Now, there's a lot of things I learnt about these kits. You get two barrels, looks identical, but the one I showed you there is slightly more flared, and it's said that the earlier Shermans had the more flared barrel, so that's the one I've put in. There's lots and lots of extra parts in this kit as well. This is another feature. A lot of the tools on the rear section weren't there. They're just not in any of the photos of the British Shermans at El Alamein, so I took them off. There you can see just placing the axe, and it's got one of those resin tool clamps on, and this is it. There we are, MJ Miniatures. There we are, we caught it just in time. And they do fantastic 3D resin stuff. I got these, long time ago, 2021, something like that. I suppose it is a long time ago. And they were new then. There's a lot more other alternatives out there now, but I don't see any problem with these at all. Kept a seam line there in the tyre because I saw it in the reference. Silly little thing to do really, but I thought I'd add it in. So sanded it smooth and then put the seam back in. There you can see the early bogies, and the one in the middle never has the loop. Again, if you're ever doing that, the two on the ends always have a loop. Horrible sprue gates on the sprocket. Now, another downside to this kit, it's a good thing because it's all in there, and it's also a bad thing that these Shermans had the side fenders, front fenders and rear fenders. The only option you get to do them in this kit is by using photo-etch, and this is getting on up there. I mean, intermediary, this is probably only for the experienced to be able to come on, get this done. It's really tricky, and it's a real nightmare because every single bit you see that isn't on that flat piece, you've had to bend and glue on in place. Oh, it's a nightmare. If you ever worked with photo-etch, the less amounts of metal you can glue to metal, the better. And this is what, I don't know, getting on for like 10 parts you've got to glue to one piece of photo-etch. It's just horrendous. But there you are. So there's no plastic alternative. And you can see the folds here that I've had to do to make these front fenders. And those gaps showed. So I had to then fill them with super glue and then sand it back. Absolute nightmare. But at this point, it was a labour of love because I was getting a bit locked in with it, if I'm honest, and carried away. Probably doing far more than I needed to, but I was enjoying the process. Now, this side fender that you get is for later Shermans, sort of Normandy not early. They didn't have any of the rivets, and they certainly didn't have this hole, which means they can be retrofitted to different Shermans, I think, that little oval hole. So they were for later marks. So I used a piece of plastic card, cut to shape, put a strip along the bottom, and that saved a lot of messing about with photo-etch. Now we're on to the tracks. At this point, little did I know, I was all blissful, thinking, thank goodness we got lovely Magic tracks and not those DS tracks. Of course, this kit was released originally with these, then re-released with DS tracks, which are Dragon's version of rubber band tracks, then re-released recently with these. This is a 50 to £60 kit. It's unacceptable. And the fact that Dragon don't answer, I contacted them on Facebook, sent them an email. That was all that there was possible. Told people on in different groups, absolutely no interest. Didn't care a toss. Terrible. Then I went on with these 3D decals from Archer, which unfortunately are now out of production. So there we are. If you can get them, get them. I don't know what the alternative is going to be. There's nothing out there as I can see. These filled a gap. Whether or not someone else is going to come in to fill that gap, I don't know. It depends how big the gap was to fill in the first place. But if you've got these, they're brilliant, because what they are little bits of resin on decals, just like decals should be, for those out there who prefer it pronounced like that. And you just apply them on as you would any other decal, and it gives you a raised surface texture. And it's stamped on there, and it's brilliant. And this is just using microset and Sol and all the rest of it. You can see they behave. I'm being a bit rough with them, to be honest. I'm not too worried about them. And it gives a lovely feature. And there you can see that that's the moulded on cast texture, which was perfectly good for me. Added on some of those raised details, and that got us to the end. So this build is now at a state of, it's got figures built for it and primed. It's got a Jeep to go with it, which was also an absolute nightmare to build, but that's another story. And this is where we got to. I think I will probably do it one day, but I know a lot of you are going to think, oh yeah, just go on and do it. You know, it's one of those things when you're in the project, when you're given so much to it, and then you sort of get let down by a little thing. From the outside, it's very easy to say, oh, don't worry about it. But when you're in it, it just knocks the wind out of you a little bit. Not that it's a worry. I'm not worried about it. But as far as pushing on and finishing this project, there's other things I'd like to do at the minute. So that's what I'm going to focus on. But hopefully this is of interest. Showing you some interesting details. It's really something I like to do with armour, super detailing like this. So if you enjoy what you've seen and you'd like to see more, do subscribe to the channel. Let me know your comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video.